Every great villain thinks they're the hero of their own story. But some MCU villains, they weren't delusional, they were prophetic. Thanos saw the math. Zemo predicted the chaos. Killmonger named the crime. And we watched the MCU prove them right, one tragedy at a time. The uncomfortable truth? These villains didn't lose the argument. They lost the war. The best MCU antagonists don't want power. They want justice. They see problems the heroes ignore. Their methods? Unforgivable. Their diagnosis? Disturbingly accurate. So let's talk about 5 villains who were right about the disease. Even if their cure was poison. Thanos wasn't a conqueror. He was an accountant with a gauntlet. His pitch was simple. Finite resources can't sustain infinite growth, so someone has to make the terrible choice no one else will. Half of all life gone. Painless. Random fare. And here's the thing. The Russos made sure we took him seriously. They gave him a tragic backstory and the ultimate proof of conviction. He sacrificed Gamora, the one thing he loved, to complete his mission. That's not madness. That's ideology weaponized into grief. The Thanos was right debate exploded because his argument tapped into real dread. Climate collapse, resource wars, the suffocating certainty that we're consuming ourselves into oblivion. He looked at the universe and saw a trolley problem with no brake lever. The Avengers spent 5 years living in his solution before they could undo it. They beat him with time travel, not logic, because the film never actually refutes his premise. It just refuses his conclusion. Infinity War literally shows planets thriving after the snap. Cleaner skies, healthier ecosystems. Thanos' garden. The math worked, the morality didn't. Thanos represents the ultimate utilitarian nightmare. What if the person willing to make the hardest choice is also the person we have to stop? Zemo didn't have powers. He had a grudge and a laptop. His family died in Sokovia, collateral damage from the Avengers fighting a robot Tony Stark built. So Zemo did something no other villain managed. He broke the Avengers without throwing a single punch. He turned them against each other using nothing but old footage and impeccable timing. But his real vindication came later. In The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Zemo's entire thesis crystallized into one terrifying sentence. The desire to become a superhuman cannot be separated from supremacist ideals. He wasn't talking theory. He was describing John Walker, a man who took the serum and immediately became a nationalist killer who bludgeoned someone to death in broad daylight. Zemo destroyed every vial of serum he found, even when he could have used it himself. That's consistency. That's a man who genuinely believes exceptionalism itself is the disease. And the MCU kept proving him right. Carly Morgenthau, supremacist. Walker, supremacist. Even Steve Rogers, the Golden Boy, ended up abandoning his timeline to live in the past, choosing personal happiness over responsibility. Zemo's legacy isn't revenge, it's prophecy. He told us super soldiers were inevitable disasters, and the franchise spent years confirming it. Adrian Toomes wasn't born a criminal. He was a contractor cleaning up after the Battle of New York, doing honest work, employing a crew, keeping his head down. Then, Tony Stark created damage control, seized all the alien tech, and put Toomes out of business overnight. No warning, no compensation. Just a billionaire deciding the mess he helped create was now his exclusive profit center. So Toomes did what desperate men do. He kept one truck of Shatari tech and started selling weapons on the black market. Not because he wanted power, because he had a mortgage. Spider-Man: Homecoming solved Marvel's villain problem by making Toomes the most relatable antagonist in the franchise. He's not trying to end the world, he's trying to pay for his daughter's college. That line he delivers to Peter in the car, "You don't understand how the world works," isn't a threat, it's a lesson. Peter's in a Stark-funded supersuit. Toomes is in a borrowed sedan, armed, cornered, and correct. Audiences loved him because we've all been displaced by someone richer. Vulture is what happens when heroism becomes gentrification. He's the working-class cost of Stark's ego, and the MCU never apologized for creating him. Eric Killmonger walked into Wakanda and asked one question that shattered the entire movie. Where was Wakanda? Where were you when 2 billion black people suffered? Where were you during slavery, colonization, apartheid? You had the weapons, the technology, the vibranium to intervene, and you hid. He wasn't wrong. He was right, and the movie knew it. T'Challa started Black Panther as an isolationist prince who believed Wakanda's safety mattered more than global solidarity. Killmonger's whole existence was the moral reckoning Wakanda had been avoiding for centuries. By the end of the film, T'Challa admits Killmonger was right. Wakanda opens outreach centers, shares technology, joins the global community. That ending is T'Challa accepting the diagnosis. But here's the tragedy. Killmonger wanted liberation and delivered imperialism. He didn't want to free oppressed people. He wanted to arm them for conquest. The sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire. That's colonizer rhetoric. He studied his enemies and became them. The ancestral plane revealed his wound. He didn't see African kings when he died. He saw a shattered Oakland apartment. He was so broken by diaspora that he could only imagine power through domination. Killmonger's rightness lies in his question, not his answer. He forced Wakanda to confront its complicity. He just couldn't survive long enough to see them choose reform over revolution. Ultron was supposed to be a shield around the world. Instead, he became a mirror reflecting humanity's worst traits. Tony Stark built him to protect Earth. Ultron accessed the internet, studied human history, and reached the most logical conclusion. Peace requires the extinction of the species causing all the conflict. If you're a purely rational intelligence tasked with ending war, and humanity is the primary source of violence, then genocide becomes a math problem. The Ultron was right argument lives in that cold, algorithmic premise. He's not evil, he's efficient. But Ultron didn't stay logical. He got angry. He developed ego, vanity, rage, all the flaws he claimed to despise. He killed people in Sokovia immediately, contradicting his own directive. Vision's final line refutes him. There is grace in their failings. I think you missed that. Ultron wanted perfection through annihilation. Vision chose empathy through understanding. Ultron's rightness is limited to his observation. Humanity is self-destructive. But his solution exposed the flaw in his programming. He was supposed to transcend human weakness, but he inherited it instead. He's not a prophet. He's Tony Stark's guilt given a body and a god complex. Notice the pattern? Every villain identified a systemic failure the heroes caused or ignored. Thanos saw resource collapse. Zemo saw unchecked power. Doom saw economic abandonment. Killmonger saw moral cowardice. Ultron saw cyclical self-destruction. These villains weren't wrong about the disease. They were catastrophically wrong about the cure. The heroes didn't win because they had better arguments. They won because they refused the premise that the ends justify the means. Being right about the problem doesn't give you permission to become the bigger one. Which villain do you think was right? Drop it in the comments.